We're back then with another legendary and exotic set preview for Marvel's Avengers. Now, the information we use in these videos comes from the science table spreadsheet that was set up with all the gear and the games being collated. This, I believe, was started off by Throwbones. I'll put a link to the spreadsheet, and also a huge thank to Throwbones for actually starting this off. It really is pretty amazing, all the data they have. But we'll be looking at the exotic and legendary sets for Iron Man. We have access to 5 of them in total at the moment. I'll tell you where exactly you farm them, and I'll tell you which pieces you'll be looking to use and why you'll actually be looking to use them as well. So let's jump in and let's check these out. Before we do go in and look at this set here, 2 things I will actually mention very quickly that is relevant. Now, previously before patch 1.3.0, your legendary sets dropped with 3 perks. That's now been nerfed, so they only drop with 2 perks, but all the data I show off in these infographics will reflect that. And also, when it comes to farming legendaries, when you look at these, of course you can get better random legendaries, but it takes a huge amount of RNG to actually get them, and there's nowhere you can actually focus farm them. So the difference with these legendary sets is you can focus farm them. So if you can see a set that's good in one particular area and you want to build that, then you go into that specific content and then you start farming from there, and that's what makes these sets really nice. First one we look at anyway, it'll be the Centurion set. So this drops from your elite bosses. That'll be your Taskmaster, Abomination, and the 2 huge AIM robots. I can never remember the names of them, but that's where this drops. If we look at slot 1 and 2, genuinely these are quite underwhelming in these sets because the majority of the times all they offer are variable effects. And what I mean by that is it's a random status effect, and it's normally attached to a random attack as well. So you can generally find a random legendary which will be much better than these, but your slots 3 and 4 are where things normally get a lot more interesting. So for the slot 3, which is the defensive slot, you start off with the extended evade perk, so it increases the distance covered during any evade by 30%. A bit niche. It could be useful for when you have your enemies explode when you run up to you, but definitely quite niche, that one. And then we've got overcharged takedown, so it grants 10 points of intrinsic energy when performing takedowns. That will be for your melee Iron Mans, because your ranged Iron Mans, if you want to make the most of them, will be flying in the sky all the time. So that would be for your melee build, but it's really nothing that special with this piece. Looking at the slot 4, this one is interesting. So it starts off with Breaker Buster. It's 20% increase in all damage dealt when wearing Hulk Buster armour. So this of course will be for players that are looking to run a Hulk Buster build. Next perk, the name isn't available, but we see what the perk does. It increases the charge rate of the heroic ultimate ability by 18%, so that's the charge rate of your Hulk Buster. So with this setup you'll do more damage with it and you'll get it more frequently, so it's actually a pretty decent piece, this one. The next set we have here is the Superior set. This drops from the Elite Vaults. It can be any one, you don't have to farm a particular vault for a particular piece. Looking at slots 1 and 2, again pretty underwhelming because it's just the variable effects that they have on them there. So we move on to slot 3. You start off with Reflexive Jarvis Barrier, so this one has a % chance. The % varies on the actual character and their stats, but it's a % chance when parrying an incoming attack to activate a Jarvis Barrier. The barrier protects against damage for 20% of maximum willpower. Now this is very nice on heroes that gain a bonus when they're overcharged, so that would be Black Widow, Hulk and Thor. On the likes of Iron Man, yes, it gives you extra survivability, but it's not really that useful, and also it will only really be for melee builds, because if you're flying in the air, firing off your rockets, you're not really going to be parrying attacks there. The next perk, the name is not available, but it offers 200% increased willpower regen while overcharged. Once again, that would work nice with a melee build for the extra survivability. Looking at the final slot here, it's the Arc Accelerator, and this one's actually really pretty nice. So it offers static overload, so Arc Field's defensive barrier now electrocutes nearby enemies. That can be really nice because what happens is that will add the shock status effect, and then when it actually does that, if you're running something like PIM, for example, which will be an opposite colour because you've got your positive and negative colourings for your status effects, you'll be doing a lot more damage, so it certainly can be nice that. The next perk, the name is not available, but it grants 10 points of intrinsic energy when performing takedowns, so once again that would be another set that is geared towards the melee side of things. The final legendary set we have here is a modular set. It drops from the Hive, and the Hive sets are genuinely a lot more interesting than our 2, just purely due to the fact I imagine it takes a lot longer to farm them. You can't farm an elite hive as you can farm an elite vault or an elite boss. But looking at this set, the melee one, it has hyperflux lasers. It's 10% increased damage of all laser attacks. Works really nice with a melee build, this, because when you use the heavy attack on your lasers, it's actually classed as melee rather than range. You then got a variable effect, so that would be a status effect on melee attacks. So if you're running a melee laser build, then this could be a really good starting piece without a doubt. Looking at the ranged one, it's accelerated muon repulsors, 12.5% increased damage of all repulsor attacks, and then the next perk is repulsor attack steal plasma damage. At the moment, if you're running a ranged build in Iron Man, the one to go for without a doubt is missiles. So if they ever buff the repulsors, or more likely the way they're going, if they ever actually nerf the missiles, then it could be worth looking to run this with a repulsor build. But hopefully we'll see a missile equivalent of this as well in time. Slot 3, as mentioned, we don't have, but I'll update it as soon as I can. The slot 4 has got Heroic Assault, so it increases the charge rate of Heroic Assault by 18%, and then it also offers 200% increased willpower regen while overcharged. Really not that great at all, and you can find much better items. But that's all the legendary sets. Let's look at the exotic ones now. So this set we look at here drops from the Heroic Hive. This is a 14 floor hive, and the way this works at the moment at least is you have a low chance once a week when you complete this for this to drop. After that, I believe the chance goes to next to nothing, but the developers are talking about changing it, and personally I feel it should be 100% once a week. But looking at the items, the first one is Doomfist, so it's got a variable effect for the first two perks, so it's a random status effect on a random melee attack, and then the final perk here, it's 30% increased status damage of all weapons. That's actually a fair amount, and you should be looking to run status damage as often as you can, so actually really pretty nice. This one of course is more for a melee build due to the fact it offers might on the stats. Looking at the ranged one, it's RT Node, so you have the variable effect, so it's a variable status effect on ranged attacks. Now because Iron Man has free ranged attacks, then what can happen is potentially, let's say you run a missile build, it could drop for your repulsors and your lasers, making it useless, and that's actually what happened to me with this item, unfortunately. But the final perk is Armory Modifier, 25% increased status damage of all weapons. If you can get this, for example, missiles when you're running a range build, and if you're running range you should go missiles, it's really pretty amazing. Now the slot 3 is Bastion. You've got Reflexive Jarvis Barrier, so there's a % chance when parrying an incoming attack to activate the Jarvis Barrier. With this being an exotic, I would have rather have seen the % chance for it to activate maybe on attack rather than parrying, because you don't do it too often and you don't do it at all if you are ranged. You then have Overcharge Recovery. It's 200% increased willpower regen while overcharged, and then Hyperstatic Shield, so Energy Barrier will electrocute nearby enemies. Energy Barrier is actually really nice. It wasn't working prior to 1.3.0. It now works, so it means when you're staying near it, it will block projectiles. But on top of that as well, via your perks you can choose to either have a 15% increased crit chance or 5% increase in your energy actually regenerating, which is really pretty great. Final item we have here is Quantum Reactor. This one here, Static Overload. Arc Field's defensive barrier now electrocutes nearby enemies. We talked earlier on in the video how that's really nice if you align it against a different effect, status effect, so your positive and your negative ones. I always struggle to explain that, but there is a video by All Day Any Day 1 on YouTube if you need a further breakdown. The next perk, this one here, it grants 10 points of intrinsic energy when performing takedowns, only really useful for a melee build. And then the final one increases charge rate of heroic support ability by 18%, so your arc field and the electricity, you'll be able to get your arc field up more often with this. So overall, definitely an interesting set. The final set we have here drops from the Mega Hive, so this is the one that's got 5 floors but you need to run it 8 times, so it's 40 floors in total, and there's just a low chance for it to drop once again, and developers need to make it 100%, they really do. But looking at this, the names are the same for the actual items. The first one then, variable effect, so you've got your random status effect on your random melee attack, and then you have Skyguard Dynamo. I've never seen anything like this yet in game, so it grants 10 points of intrinsic energy when collecting heroic orbs, and that could actually be pretty useful depending on the build, especially if you're doing a lot of takedowns. You can get your overcharge even quicker there, so yeah, when I think about it, that could actually be pretty nice. Looking at the ranged one, you've got your variable effect on your ranged attacks. So once again, because there's only 2 of these perks and you want to run missiles, more than likely if you are running ranged, then there's a chance you may not get that. But you also have overcharge barriers, 20% increased damage while overcharged, so that's certainly really nice there. And if you get missiles, it's going to be a best in slot item. This one or the one before that we did look at in the slot 2. For the slot 3 we have Bastion, so it's untouchable Jarvis barrier. Once again, this one is a % chance when perfectly evading an incoming attack as opposed to actually parrying it. I would prefer to see it on attacks. You then have a perk here that grants 10 points of intrinsic energy when performing takedowns, and then increase the distance covered during any evade by 30%. It's decent in this item, but for an exotic it could definitely be better. Looking at the slot 4, the Quantum Reactor, and the final one we'll look at, you've got Breaker Buster, so 20% increase in all damage when wearing Hulkbuster armour. Ultimate Heroic Charge, increases the charge rate of the Heroic Ultimate ability by 18%, so you can get your Hulkbuster up even quicker. And then Overcharge Support, so it's 15% increased Heroic charge rate while overcharged as well. That will allow you to get your arc reactor actually up there. So that is all the gear. Let me know in the comments below what you think of these sets. There's some nice pieces, but I do still feel overall that exotics could do with a buff. But again, this spreadsheet will hopefully help you focus farm many particular items that will really work with your build. But once again, let me know what you think of these items in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in, stay safe, and I'll see you all again soon.